Britain's highest court has ruled Boris Johnson's suspension of Parliament was unlawful. This morning's ruling comes after the Prime Minister made the decision to shut down the legislative body earlier this month after tense negotiations over the UK leaving the EU. Britain's highest court decided the move was an effort to stifle the Brexit debate, with one senior judge saying the suspension, quote, had the effect of frustrating or preventing the ability of Parliament to carry out its constitutional functions without reasonable justification. So CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tyab joins us now from London with more on this ruling, which really just came down just really a couple of hours ago. We want to know the significance for Brexit, for Boris Johnson, for Parliament. What does this really mean?
Anne-Marie, good morning. Well, we've had a lot of major moments in Brexit over the last 3 years, but this is big, and what can only be described as a major blow to Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Britain's highest court has ruled his decision to suspend Parliament for 5 weeks in the final weeks before the October 31st Brexit deadline was unlawful. Now check this out. The Supreme Court ruling was unanimous. No one was expecting that. No one was expecting the court to rule so definitively and so pointedly. And what they ruled is the Prime Minister unlawfully suspended Parliament, which in legal terms means the suspension never happened and that Parliament is technically still sitting. Now this incredible judgment was read out by the President of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, if you will, Lady Brenda Hale, who said, and I quote, "This was unlawful because it had the effect of frustrating or preventing the ability of Parliament to carry out its constitutional functions without reasonable justification." Now, it'd be an understatement to say this case is a rare confrontation, or rather a case of a rare confrontation between the Prime Minister, the courts, and Parliament, but it really is. And the big loser here is Prime Minister Boris Johnson, a man who's only been in the job for a few weeks.
Right. So Boris Johnson was arguing that Parliament needed time to get ready for a new legislative session. His critics were saying, oh, you're bringing lawmakers back just in time for the Brexit deadline, so they won't be able to renegotiate anything. So then the question is, what happens next? If Parliament has technically always been in session, will we see lawmakers heading back to work?
Yeah, indeed. In short, because the court says Parliament was never suspended, lawmakers go back to work, where they will go back to the business of debating Brexit. But another question here really is the fate of Boris Johnson. As Prime Minister, he's already suffered defeat after defeat after defeat. He's also lost his majority and only commands a minority in Parliament, all of which he's largely shrugged off. But this is different. This is the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, saying he acted unlawfully by suspending Parliament. And it gets even bigger because it also raises major questions about what advice he gave to the Queen. The Queen is, of course, the UK head of state, and on Boris Johnson's advice, she prorogued Parliament. But now that the court has ruled that that advice was unlawful, his critics are saying he lied to the sovereign, which is to say this is uncharted territory here. So far, there's been no comment from Buckingham Palace, and for Prime Minister Boris Johnson, well, he's where you are now. He's in New York for the United Nations General Assembly. One would imagine he'll be heading back to the UK pretty quick, where he could do a few things, which include calling an election or resign.
Wow, Imtiaz, yeah, that's major. Thank you very much.